What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sanity Symphony Podcast. Here with your host, Official Insanity, and here I'm joined with special guest Justin Jackson. Say what's up to everyone.
Yo, what's up, everybody? What's
All right,
everybody doing out there?
What's up, man? So, give a little intro on yourself, a little bio to the listeners, and let everyone know who you are and where you came from.
So a little bit about me. So I'm from Wisconsin. Actually, I was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Um, so I grew up without my dad. My dad was gone when I was 7 years old, and kind of grew up with my mom and three siblings on her own. Which things kind of went from, if you look at if you ever watch Growing Pains, you sit around the table and you talk about school and everything with the whole family. We kind of went from that to back into the inner city, where it was just a single mother trying to raise four mixed kids in the middle of the ghetto, and times are rough. So I kind of fell into the wrong crowd. I gave up on sports and everything that I wanted to be. When you're a kid, you want to see all these goals and visions of what you might want to be in the future. And all that kind of shifted when I got involved with the gangs in Milwaukee. And, I kind of fell into, drug selling and just the wrong crowd. And it ended up leading me to prison. It led me to not finishing school. I never graduated high school. I had to get my HSED through a prison boot camp, and that's how I attained my high school equivalency diploma. And I was able to at least get into some college courses, kind of get my life back on track. So I got two sisters and one younger brother, and I have three children. With a stepson, and just kind of moving through life from there.
Speaking on hanging around the wrong people and making those mistakes, can you speak on like what that mistake was and what you've learned from that time and any advice you want to give people that could be currently in that position that you were back then?
Oh, wow. If I could speak to myself back then, wow, I'd be doing all the things I'm saying now to myself. So when I was 16 years old, I ended up selling some large amounts of drugs to an undercover, and that led me to a prison sentence. They tried to give me an opportunity to go to boot camp the first time and said, hey, you can change your life around. And me being stubborn, hard headed, trying to live up to the hype of, um, I'm not going to listen and let somebody tell me what to do. I ended up getting revoked, and I ended up going to prison for about 3 years. And when I first got to prison, I realized, after probably about several months, that this isn't where I want to be. So I started really thinking to myself, uh, man, this what happened. Where did things go left? At first I was like, oh yeah, going to jail, I could be hardcore, I could hang with the homies, but sitting in prison and realizing that my life was going nowhere, it just it shifted something in me. So I ended up doing that prison stint, and then after that it was just hard to get back on track, because once you're in the system, it's very hard to, especially being biracial, once you're in the system, it's very hard to get out of it, because it's a money racket. They want to see you pay the money to the state makes money. The more inmates, the more money. So it was just hard to kind of get out of that cycle. Well, I ended up meeting a my sixth grade Spanish teacher, from sixth grade. He kind of took me in and took me camping for the first time, and he was always a part of my life. So I reached out to him several times and was like, "Hey, man, I want to get back into school." He got me back into school, and I blew it. I screwed it up, just being hard headed. And now it's kind of hard for me to look at the kids and the youth that I deal with, because they make those same mistakes. And coming from me, I'm like, "Hey, I'm trying to tell you exactly where this is going to lead you." And so yeah, I caught a couple cases over the years, just hanging with the wrong people, um, that didn't add value to my life. These are people that I thought were my best friends, my family outside of my family. So growing up in the gang life and not having my mother actively in my life, because of her addiction, she was battling her own demons, uh, being a single mother, being without her husband, and just being away from her family and trying to raise 4 kids. It was hard on her, and I didn't realize that then. So I took it upon myself to say, "Hey, I don't want nothing to do with you guys," and just went to the streets. And these guys I thought were my best friends. Eventually, in the future, a few of them robbed me. A few of them, attacked me in ways that was mental, um, just like things I didn't think a friend could do to you. And so I learned a lot of hard lessons along the way. I tell my old self is just be careful who you put in your circle. Just be careful who you have around you because not everybody has your best interests at heart.
And a wise man once said that you are the sum of the five people you hang around the most. So it's definitely like you got to be aware of the five people that you want to stay around the most because what they do, their mannerisms can have an influence on you. And I for sure, I'm blessed enough to learn at a very young age, maybe around like I'd say 17, 18 is when I learned to like be aware of who I hang around more. And sure, I can admit in my early 20s, I still made some mistakes of hanging around the wrong people and it led me to some bad situations and stuff like that. And honestly, I took those as learning lessons more than anything
You
because,
were smart enough to say, "Hey,
yeah,
this isn't where I want to be."
exactly. And I learned
Early
like
on.
it's not going to benefit me in the future either.
Mhm.
So I definitely had to remove those people, and people got to have that discipline to be able to remove those people because some people can just look at it like, man, all these memories and the stuff that we did, but that's true, but how are they going to benefit you in your future, you know?
Right, right. And it's crazy you said that because, when you look at the memories and I guess what the biggest thing I can say is my loyalties were in the wrong place. I was loyal to the wrong people.
Mm,
Being loyal to them, I was like, "Oh man, I'm always ride for them. I'm always be there for them," and bailing each other out of jail. And I mean, do you really want to spend your life earning your hard-earned money to bail your friends out of jail? I mean,
yeah.
that makes sense. How do you get ahead? You know? So
If you can speak on rebuilding process and healing relationship with your family during the time when you had to have separate time from your family because you had to serve some time and how hard it was to redeem yourself as a father, rebuilding process on rebuilding that relationship.
man, it was hard to rebuild it because even to this day, right now, like right now, I'm going through a lot with my younger brother. Um, he he doesn't see me the same way, ever since I went to prison, ever since excuse me, I wasn't around, and like actually, me and him talk right now, and it's not good. So still trying to work on rebuilding that. But as far as my parental unit and my kids, I when I went to the boot camp, they made me sit down and write letters. I had to write letters to everybody. Well, let me back up. When I was in prison, I knew that I was missing my brother's baseball game. And that really hurt. My mom would send me letters and say, "Hey, he got his first home run, and I'm not there to see that, and neither is his father." So me being the older brother and 9 years older, I was always the man of the household.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am not there. My sisters are graduating school. I'm not there to see it. So that really ate at me. And, I wrote these letters. Um, First and foremost, they made me write a letter to my father, you know, and I was never going to send it to him, but I had to write a letter in order to graduate. And, in that letter, I realized that I can't keep blaming him leaving for my mistakes. I had to take ownership of my own mistakes. And that's one biggest thing that they taught me there. And I'm not saying I was perfect after I got out. After I got out, I still was kind of screwing up, and I was still, making mistakes and stuff because I decided to bring the old crowd around.
Mm-hmm.
And, coming into fatherhood, I realized, that I don't want my kids to have to go through what I went, you know. So, um, as they were young, I still was kind of going to jail and everything because, like I said, it's hard to get out of the system. Once you're in the
Yeah.
system, any little step you make that's wrong, you're back in jail. You're back in the system on probation. So I spent a lot of time away from my oldest son. I have a 21-year-old son, uh, who now our relationship is becoming solid. You know, He wants to be a influencer. He wants to be a public speaker. He wants to be able to motivate, people or young men his age. And we're still rebuilding. As far as my oldest daughter, we rarely talk. We kind of still don't talk, but she's doing very, very well. Graduated college, and is actually her mother's boss now, and just doing phenomenal. She moved to North Carolina and is doing excellent. I also have two younger children who, right now, it's hard because I have an ex-wife, and she has them 90% of the time. And that's
Yeah.
just the way the court order went. It's not that I'm not there, not that they don't love me, that I don't show them support, because FaceTime them every soccer game, FaceTime them, first day of school. I think I sent you some pictures, the first day of my daughter's school, so I mean, I'm involved with them, but through the courts, I just don't get them. So, and that's part of what I try to teach young men. Like, don't put yourself in a situation where that's going to happen, because no matter how hard you're trying and you're doing, a lot of times the courts just don't see it that way. They want their child support, they want their money, they want to make sure that these dollars keep rolling in, to them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to get back on track, when you're like, yo, man, I get them and I take them shopping, I do all this, I do everything for them, I support them, and yet you still get looked at as not being that type of father that's present, you know. So it's kind of hard, it's really hard. I get my kids every other weekend, and I try to make the best of it, So, and I let them know every day, that I love them. I make sure I call them at the same time every day, whether I got to do a podcast, whether I got to, go to work. It doesn't matter. 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., I'm calling them, FaceTime. So I think that's the biggest thing, about like keeping that relationship with your kids. Even if you're not there 24/7, set up a time where you know that this is your time. This is the time that you're going to be present. This is the time that you're going to show them that you're there so they can expect
That's right. And I know from what I've seen and what I've noticed based on just like talking and observing with people, I think a lot of people like my age in their 20s right now, a lot of them grew up fatherless.
that. Yes.
So I think it's safe to say like my generation is definitely in need of guys like you know, to like mentor the fathers out there who were absent, that they
Mhm.
can learn like, there's still a second chance out there. It's just the effort you got to put in and show that you really care.
Right. You got to put the work in. I
Exactly.
mean, if you don't put the work in, nothing's going to come out of it. You could sit back all day long and say, man, I wish I could do better. I want to do better, but if you're not making the moves to do better, it's not going to happen, and then, they're going to see that later on in life. That's the biggest thing. I think my younger brother, when I was talking about me and my younger brother having issues, he kind of sent me a text message the other day, and it's crazy we're having this conversation because, he kind of poked at me a little bit, was like, I had a conversation with your son today, and it seems like he's turning out to be a better man than you were, you know. And I said, oh man, I'm doing my job. I said, I'm doing good then, because every father or mother wants their kids to be better than them. You know,
Exactly.
that's the point, and my brother doesn't have kids, so he wouldn't clearly understand that. I'm like,
Right. Right.
I said, man, thank you. That's actually a compliment, trying to make me mad and push my buttons, but so that's a compliment, brother.
And I think what most fathers probably misunderstand is that, like, you're not always going to get that love and trust from the get go. Like you said, it takes time. Like, you got to earn it. Just build the trust. And if you really want it that bad, you're willing to put in the dedication and the effort as long as it takes until you redeem the full trust again.
Right. It does. It takes a while. My mom never bailed me out a day in my life. And first of all, she couldn't afford it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but outside of that, she just wouldn't do it. And this one time I went to jail, and that's kind of where the Real Chat podcast started. I started this Real Chat group in jail, and I started talking to young men, and they were listening, and I was like, man, when I get out, I'm gonna start this support group. It's called Real Chat. All of a sudden now, 25 years later, it turned into a podcast. And so, my mom came in and she said, there's something different about you. She went and she maxed out a credit card to bail me out, you know, And that right there, I knew that we were starting to rebuild. We were starting to make that connection again. That I was serious about what I wanted to do in my life. So and that was over 15 years ago, and we've been solid ever since.
Can you speak on like what was the main struggles that you overcame during your redemption journey as a father?
Oh, I think most of that battle was with myself. Not thinking that I was worthy to even be in these kids' lives. You know, uh, I remember my son. When he was my oldest son, he was probably 3 years old, looking at me through a jail cell and trying to figure out how to get in there. He was messing with the window and trying to see, hey, this window doesn't open. And I'm just, I could see it in his head just spinning. Like I want to get in there. And I mean, man, the struggle is just with myself. I was battling myself, not thinking that I was worthy enough to even be their father, even to be there. And now hearing my son, 21-year-old, tell me, how proud he is of me, that he's watching my podcast, that he's watching my clips, my lives, and everything like that. And he's like, even joining in, like, Dad, you should do it this way. You should do this, And being 21, I'm 44 years old, and I'm just learning how to do TikTok live and how to do Instagram and social media and everything. And so I mean, it just, I mean, I got done battling myself. I finally told myself, hey man, I'm worthy. I'm a good father. I'm not the best father, but I'm a good father you know, and I'm definitely going to show up and I'm going to show out for them no matter what it is they do in life and try to give them the best advice that I can.
What were some things you would do to maintain your mental health during times where you could be sitting at home, like just feeling discouraged or just feeling like, man, what if I never can redeem myself? And just having those negative thoughts.
And I did a lot of reading and so I did a lot of reading and I started watching a lot of podcasts myself. I started reaching out to people that, saw me in a light that maybe the people on the streets did. For starters, I reached out to Jimmy Casas, who was my sixth grade Spanish teacher. And, I asked him, hey, man, with all the trouble that I caused and everything that I did, like, how do you really see me? And then I really started watching Eric Thomas. Not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Eric Thomas, um, Secret to Success podcast, and just listening to his story. And I started taking value out of the people's stories that I was listening to, listening to their stories. And I was like, man, they come from kind of the same background and they changed their lives around and feel better. And then I started seeing the value in myself. You know, I never thought that I'd be doing public speaking. I never thought that I would be speaking in front of kids and actually having kids reach out to me through email messages and say, "Hey, man, what you said today really, really resonated with me." I never thought that. So, um, other than that, man, working out and just trying to stay focused, and just constantly learning. I started learning more about mental health, mindset, um, training, getting rid of negative thoughts. Every time I have a negative thought, I try to replace it with a positive thought. So and that kind of helped me along the way. Uh, and I have less outbursts. Less outbursts with the kids. When they're screwing up and things like that. It's just like, oh man, and then really just thinking about what I used to. Like they could be doing 10 times worse. So it's not. Is it really that serious? No.
Staying on that topic as well, for the listeners who would could be in the same position as you, could you speak on the lessons you learned from all of your adversity throughout your life, all the challenges from your very beginning to now, and emphasize the importance on resilience and self-reflection during your circumstances?
Man, I can say the lessons that I learned. Is value yourself, number one. Because if you're not your best self, you can't be good. You're no good to nobody. And that goes in all relationships with your friends, with your spouse, with your kids. You have to put yourself first. You have to, and a lot of times I know growing up, we always heard, how our mothers put in backbreaking work, to make sure they went without to make sure we were okay, you know, and a lot of times that led to mental decline. They were going through mental issues, and things like that. I watched my mom just beat herself up and work herself to death to take care of us. But the lesson that I learned is I got to put myself first. I got to make sure I take care of myself, my mental health, my physical health, and then that way I can be a better father. I can be a better brother, be a better son, all the way around like that. So, things that, as far as resilience, I know that I speak a lot of that. I speak about resilience a lot when I do public speaking. That's one of my main topics. And I always take a basketball with me, because something being resilient is trained. You have to train yourself to be that way. Not everybody bounces back, you know. But one thing I can say is as a child, you're very resilient. You just have to be around the right people and have the right people sharing their stories with you, in the right way. So, like I said, I reached out to Jimmy Casas a lot because he was able to tell me how worthy I was. Hey man, you always had a good smile. You were always willing to help somebody. And I started looking at those characteristics about myself, and that's where I see everyone's story matters. The more stories you hear, the more you can learn from those stories. Might not be your same story, but you can take something out of that, and bounce back from a situation that you're going through. So I guess kind of use their story as a basketball, man. You just kind of use that, say, hey, I'm gonna bounce back from
That's what it's all about too, is the bounce back as well. Like show that you're willing to put in the effort to be the better person, and this newer version of you will overlook anything you've done in the past.
that.
You
Right,
know,
right.
and
Well, I want to say that I have a very strong support system right now, and most of that support system comes from Sway in the morning. I have a amazing group of men that no matter what the situation is, what the problem is, we can tune in on the group chat and I'm going to get answers. I'm going to get what I'm looking for, and I'm going to get it in all different manners, ways of life, different stages and phases of life. There's probably about 8 of us that are citizens of Sway's universe. And man, it's crazy support that I get from, you know. I'm sure you're familiar with Terry from LA.
yes,
I get a lot of direct messages, and he's very direct. so when I reach out to him, he's like, "Yo, pull up the bridges, man, and man up." And I'm like, "Okay, all right. Well, it's probably not what I was looking for, but and then I got Louis, Louis Ochoa. He, is a little more compassionate. He's got a little bit more. Um, well, I guess yeah, he's a little more compassionate, with his response. So, but yeah, it's just about having that support system. You gotta reach out and get the right people around.
speaking on your support system, is there anyone else you wanted to shout out that just helped you along your journey from the very beginning?
Oh man, Jimmy Casas, and I never this man, like I said, he I shout him out because I want to congratulate him. He got 1,000 subscribers on his podcast, the interview chair.
Nice.
But that's how I started podcasting, man. This dude, like, he has 2 different podcasts. Well, first of all, he was my Spanish teacher, and he wanted to adopt me when I was younger. He wrote a book about me, that has me in that book. It's called Live Your Excellence, and it's on an educational basis. So what he does is he's a coach for teachers, administrators, principals, school liaisons. He does the whole nine. And watching his success over the years showed me, that hey, man, I can do that. I just coach and I teach on a different level. And but he's been very inspirational in my journey. So I really want to shout him out, man. He never gave up on me. He never gave up on my family, and even 30 years later, I had the opportunity to go and get on stage with him for the first time and speak to an audience. Just man, it's crazy. So I mean, that's my biggest shout out. The rest of them, I already you know a lot of them. Louis Ochoa, Big Bear. These are the guys that I reach out to every day. And then just basically shout out to Sway, man. He had a conversation with me that really resonated with me, and I only met the man once. Met him one time, talked to him for about a half hour, and it just conversation was deep. And yeah, like man, I once I started listening and tuning into the shows every morning, it really changed my mindset.
What's one thing that always stuck to you the most throughout that conversation with Sway?
Man, the way I handle the issues with me not having my kids every day, you know, um, people have a lot more in common than people would know. We'll just say that. Because his story's not my story. It really resonated with me on the way that I handle the situations that I'm going through right now. So I'm able to be a little more relaxed and a little more calm. When I handle certain situations. So yeah, I think because I brought something up, and he's like, no, 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 no. And he's like, wait, I'm not gonna tell you what to do. He was like, this is what I would do, and I'm like, cool, I got it. So also I want to shout out to Tracy G, man. She had a long conversation with me, and just her being grounded and the way she is spiritually, you know, says a lot. I like to watch all of her daily motivations and inspirational quotes and everything like that. And just having a moment to talk to her, man, was great. So uh, I've been taking a lot of walks and taking a lot of me time. So
It's always good to have those self-isolation times to just clear your mind and do some self-reflecting and get a chance to just look at yourself if there's anything you want to change, anything you noticed as far as progress you made within yourself. People
yeah,
always got to take time to just do some self-reflection.
right. Well, you see where you can do better, see where you're probably not doing enough, and it's like, wow. But when you're talking to yourself, that's the real person you need to be talking to, because everybody else can tell you what you want to hear. You
Right.
know, you got to be able to look in the mirror and know that you're doing something right. And I think that's the biggest thing with the mental health crisis and issue there. We look in the mirror and we're not 100% happy with ourselves. You know, when you can get to that level where you're like, yo, I am enough, and I'm definitely happy. I'm doing the right thing. Because for me in the past, I was always doing dirt. I'm not doing any of that no more. So when somebody, tries to beat me down, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like I know I can look in the mirror and say I'm happy with who I am right
As you should be, man. You deserve it and you worked hard on this journey, man.
now.
And
Thank you.
thank you for taking the time to speak on your journey as well, man. I know it's going to be an inspiration to fathers all around that are going through the same thing you're going through as well.
Man, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I just want to say one quick thing, man. You only know as far as you've been taught. You can only see as far as you've been taught. So keep learning. I mean, reach out to fathers who have come before us, and just, man, keep listening. You know.
Did you want to give a shout out to your podcast as well?
Oh yeah, so the Real Chat Podcast with Justin Jackson. You can find me on social, Instagram, Justin Jackson 331, TikTok, Justin Jackson 133. I usually keep everything Justin Jackson. Find me anywhere, Apple Pod. Um, yeah, I'm on all platforms except for Pandora. So YouTube, check out the Real Chat Podcast.
And lastly, I just remembered one last question. I usually ask my guests if there's one artist in any genre of music that they resonated with the most and why.
Hmm. Ooh, it's a hard one. Got a lot of 'em. Man, yeah, that's a hard one. You know, I it's crazy, but I gotta say Dragon. I gotta say Dragon. I mean, he comes off a little vicious, but there's a lot of notes, man, that come out of his music. You know, not sure if you hear wave hoppers. It's a little derogatory, but that's one of my favorites, man. Just I try to tell these kids, man, stop following, start leading. So wave hoppers is a prime example of that.
That's a fact too, and I always want to tell people like being a follower. I always tell people being a follower just shows that you're you're currently lost with your identity.
Right,
So you're trying to follow other things to see if that's who you truly are, instead of
right.
just learning to invent yourself and be different, be unique. Stand out.
That's where you get lost, and sometimes when you get that far lost, it's hard to come back from that. Because
Exactly.
you don't have an identity. You don't know who you are. You don't know. And I did that a lot. You know what I mean? For the longest time, music influenced me. Music, movies, all that influenced me because I had nobody that was really teaching,
Exactly.
and the ones that were, I was running from. So, listening to music, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna wear. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get out here in these streets. I'm gonna do this. And then I went to jail and I was like, oh no, that's not what I want to do. So,
I'm definitely guilty as that as well. I grew up a hip hop baby, so just I grew up wearing the Air Forces, dressing like everyone in the industry, and I did some things that they did that I've learned the hard way through experience that I shouldn't be doing those things either. So,
and you realize a lot of some of those things are not even factual.
and it's crazy how much influence music can have on people too, and that's what most people tend to forget is that music has so much influence, and the fan base, the connection that people have, like some people take their word as like it like it's the
Golden,
truth.
yeah,
Yeah.
like this is God speaking to me. It's like
Yeah.
this is what I
So
gotta
like
go do.
some people have to really be careful on what they say with their lyrics, especially if you're trying to make a song that's really impactful for your listeners. Just be mindful that what you say has an impact and has an influence on others.
Right. But I think a big thing too is the people, again, the people that you surround yourself with, being able to tell you like, hey man, it's okay to listen to that kind of music, but that's not the life. That's not your identity. You know what I mean? This person is telling a story of maybe their identity or someone's identity that they want to have. And from a different perspective. But it's okay to listen. It's okay to listen to hip hop. A lot of people get out here and tell you like, oh, you shouldn't listen to that kind of music. You know what I mean? It's like, man, it's a lot of power in that music. Both culturally and spiritually, man, it's a lot of power in that music because it comes from the heart, and it comes from people's lives, man. These are their stories. So somebody else trying to bite off somebody else's story, you got to be the bigger person to say, hey, it's good music, but I think you should probably check this out too. You know what I mean? You got to balance it out. So I listen to everything. I listen to some of everything. That way I
So
don't get sucked into that again.
it's always good to be versatile with your music.
Yes.
And that concludes another episode of Sanity and Symphony Podcast here with my guest Justin Jackson. Peace.